Hello everybody, my name is Nicolas Fox. I'm a permaculture designer and I'm an owner of Soul and Soil. That is my company where I collect compost and execute permaculture designs. But today, we're going to be talking about my favorite thing to do, composting. We will be talking about the importance of composting to the environment, the importance of composting for your garden, for your trees, for your plants, and the importance of composting for your mind and your body. But before we start, I just want to show that I have on the proper gear or sun gear to compost properly. Right now I have on boots. You can also wear these waterproof boots, especially when you're getting dirty and you have large compost piles. It's a very good thing to have. I have on gloves, long pants, an extra shirt, and these are like work clothing. So anytime I'm working with compost and raw fruit material, I want to be protected and make sure I'm not dirtying my clothing because this is a dirty job. And I have on a hat. It's like 7:30 p.m. now in the Bahamas, but it's important to protect your face from the UV rays and just to make sure you stay cool. But before we start composting, we're gonna be stretching and mobilizing the shoulders. And you don't have to use a PVC pipe. You can use a shovel, you can use a stick, you can use anything. Just make sure you're balanced. And what you want to do is you want to take your shoulder, your arms, and you want to just bring it up to your head and back down for 10. You could also do some windmills just to open up those shoulders. You can see the waste we'll be dealing with today. So I have some brewery grain from one of our local breweries, and I have some food waste from my kitchen. These are both considered nitrogen waste. So in composting you have green waste and brown waste, and your brown waste is mostly leaves, paper, cardboard, or anything dry. Full of carbon, it's very carbon rich. And your food waste, as you can see all the flies all around it, they can't wait to get on it. Your food waste consists of grains, fruits and vegetables, maybe vegan food items, eggshells, so on and so forth. So carbon and nitrogen must be balanced in your compost pile. There's usually a ratio of 25 to 1 or 31 to 1. Yes. Yeah. So now that you understand that, we're going to talk about what these tools do and what they're for. See, composting is just a biological process called decomposition. And most biological processes have mostly the same rules. Composting is no different. When you have your balanced carbon and nitrogen ratios, you want to make sure that both carbon and nitrogen are, both products or both resources are evenly coating each other. So the grain that we have here and the food waste that we have here has to be crushed to create more surface area to interact with the carbon in the compost pile. Something like this edge trimmer. What is this? Oh, I don't know. Something like this edge trimmer is perfectly fine and available probably at your own hardware store. When I compost, I have a custom-made composting tool. Call it the chopper. When you're composting and you're collecting your food waste, I find that the 5-gallon bucket is one of the best options to compost or to store your food waste in. As you can see, it's been completely crushed to a pulp. It's a very sturdy and durable bucket, and it also comes with one of these plastic seals that locks air and, most importantly, pests out. If you have an open air system that you store your food waste in, it will start to decay, and the smell of the decay is going to bring odors, and those odors will bring pests. And that's not what we want when we compost. So having a 5-gallon bucket that's sealable, I find that it works best for most situations, especially in business or home. And they're pretty cheap, but they offer a lot of space. And that's why I think the 5-gallon bucket is one of the best to use when you're storing food waste. Here we have an unfinished compost pile, and for the sake of this video, I have risked my compost pile just a little bit to show you what it looks like. Whenever you are composting, you do not want to have your pile exposed. This waste here is considered nitrogen waste. This is the same brewery waste or grain that I was showing you in the bucket earlier. When you leave nitrogen waste on top of your compost, it starts to break down and it attracts pests, rodents, flies, and other animals. I mean, that may be all fine and well with you, but some people don't like that. I'm going to give you a sneak peek in this compost pile, and the flies are angry. There are layers. See, remember what I talked about earlier with the surface area? It's very important that you layer your compost pile with the adequate amount of carbon to nitrogen in those ratios. This ensures that there's proper coverage, or there's proper mixing to get a homogeneous mix of your carbon and nitrogen items. That waste that we had earlier, we're just gonna go ahead and dump it on the pile. Do it. This is more brewery grain, and because it's so fine, it doesn't need to be crushed. Get every last drop. Now that that's done, you have your grains and all of your other composting mix. You just want to make sure it's level. And the reason I like to make sure my compost pile is level is so that there's an even distribution of heat once the pile starts to break down. And these are called exudates, if I'm right. Cut. The reason composting is so important is because it helps to bolster that environment that your plant is in. See, your plant is in something called soil, and soil itself is alive. When you have soil, there are many different microorganisms, from protists to arthropods, archaea, fungi, bacteria. These are all in the soil, and these all play an important role in creating things for your tree or your plant that it needs. Some of these things break down rock minerals to put into simpler forms for your tree to take up. Some of these things break down sugars into simple sugars for your tree to then use. Some of these things protect your tree from disease. And this is what compost is. Compost is a large part of what soil is. when you see a tree in the forest and there's a layer of leaves around its base, that tree is creating its own soil. It's mulching its surroundings so that things will break it down. Fungi will start to come up out of the soil to break these leaves down, and then the fungi will produce products for the tree to take up, and the tree can continue to produce leaves for the fungi to eat. And it's a whole process of symbiosis that's happening here. And that's why it's important to compost. Not only is it important for the trees, it's important for our environment. I know for the Bahamas itself, we import over 300 million tons a year, and 60% of that is food waste or compostable waste, and all of that is going to the landfill where it's not being used as a proper resource. So I think that my mission with this company is to get the entire Bahamas to start composting more, so we have resources to grow our own food and to protect the environment. When food waste goes to the landfill, it produces methane. When you're composting, you're producing a fraction of that through methane or CO2, and it's very small, especially if you're aerobic composting. And what aerobic composting is, it's continuously introducing oxygen into that pile, into that carbon and nitrogen, because the bacteria and the fungi that break this pile down, they need oxygen to continuously break that pile down. Without oxygen, they will die. And now your pile is anaerobic and it smells terrible. Ooh, I don't have much time. The mosquitoes are starting to come out. So now that we understand why and how we turn our compost piles, let's talk about what is there to talk about? Woo. Yep, that's it. Thank you all for joining and watching, and I'm gonna send that back to Chaz right now. So I hope you learned a lot about composting. Tell me what you think.